Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's go over the market. Let's talk about what is happening to Tesla stock today. Finally got a bit more volatility after, past few days been kind of sideways chop. And like I mentioned, pretty big move is on its way. Fortunately, it was to the downside, but nonetheless, I'll go over what I personally believe is next for Tesla stock. And yeah, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. Of course, if you do enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts on the updates, thoughts on the charts and updates and etc. Well, again, I do share my thoughts, updates with my members every single day as the market is actually trading throughout the trading day, every single day. Just $3 a month. That's all it is. Very nice, very cheap. I'm not trying to make anything, crazy expensive. Just $3. You get access to my, private YouTube membership section where again, I'm constantly sharing these thoughts, post updates with our members throughout the day. Or $5 a month if you're interested, gives you access to the second tier, which also includes NVDA, plus of course everything in the first tier. Jumping into it, Tesla closing the day down 5%, getting a nice bounce in the last 15 minutes or so of the day, which is exactly what I told my members about entering right here on Tesla right here. You can see, right, Tesla right into the demand zone here should have a good amount of support, demand kick in around this general area to at least stop the bleeding, right? And you can see this was exactly when we were bleeding into this overall range, which we obviously got a bounce from. So what does this mean moving forward? Well, Tesla stock, obviously, next week is a big week, right? Obviously, we have Friday, the market is closed. I will not be uploading a video tomorrow. I will be out of town. I'll upload tomorrow's video instead over the weekend. I'll still have it. I'll just be late. But nonetheless, yeah, market's closed on Friday, but obviously next week we have Tesla earnings on Tuesday. Pretty big day, and I think we're not going to really find out where we actually will go next on Tesla stock, unfortunately, until earnings. At least that's what it seems like at the moment, right? Because you have to understand, right? We had this small little congestion. We obviously broke to the downside, which I also told our members about. If we lose, I think it was, this level right here I mentioned, 246, we most likely flush down. And obviously you can see as we lost it and closed the candle below it, we continue to flush pretty aggressively. Now, moving into, kind of the overall perspective next for Tesla stock, right? We're still within this, and again, I've been sharing this one for quite some time, but we're still contained within this massive 1 hour sort of wedge, if you will. Is it a wedge or is it a pattern? I don't know, man. I always get confused by the names. Whatever. It's getting tight and it's in this pattern that's clearly congesting the stock and, making it stuck within a range. So the thing we really care about is, ultimately breaking above or below. You can see on this flush down today, we got very damn close to the bottom, right? But, this was an area not to necessarily panic in, at least not yet, mainly because, we're at major support, right, which is this, kind of horizontal rectangle, if you will, I have drawn here. But also, we're very close to the bottom of the trend line, right? That's exactly what I was sharing with the members about right over here. We're pretty much entering that vicinity now, that demand spot. And clearly the demand clearly kicked in, especially towards the end of the day. So not looking too bad. Obviously, the reason for the sell-off was J-Pow. J-Pow upset the markets, to say the least. That's, obviously, pretty much what happened. So, the point is I'm trying to make is this, right? As long as we're contained within this area, we don't truly know where Tesla was going to go next. We can obviously assume and predict and whatever, but we don't actually have any actual meaningful confirmation to any extent whatsoever until we break above or below one of these red trend lines, right? Essentially, it's that simple ultimately. And, this very well might wait until earnings. Now, if they really want to mess with things, they could potentially trap it and really kill premium right over here, even post earnings. I don't think that's going to happen. That'd be pretty surprised if that were to happen, but don't be surprised if Tesla, gets a small balance. Maybe even tomorrow makes its way back up closer to 250. Don't be completely shocked by that because the max pain for Tesla did actually drop down to 250, right? So there is potential that we rise closer to 250 tomorrow. That is not completely out of the question. Also to sort of almost retest this little breakdown that we had, right? To kind of get back into this little area that was a demand spot, now resistance. So again, mid to high 240s potentially tomorrow. Not completely out of the question, right? Not completely out of the question here, but that doesn't mean that Tesla's out of the woods just yet because we can easily reject from here and make our way down once again, especially post earnings. So again, I just want to make it clear, even though it is finding a bounce here, it doesn't mean that the stock is safe. It doesn't mean the stock is guaranteed to be bullish. Oh, congratulations, we came to the bottom here. Now we just rocket from, no, of course not. It's not that simple, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that we're making our way south just yet because we have not broken these key levels yet. Like I mentioned many times, right? We need to break below these key levels. And again, the most important level is to really start getting a sense of direction is one of these two trend lines. Until one of these two trend lines snaps, there is no actual true sense of direction, and we most likely continue chopping up, most likely until earnings at this point. So don't completely disregard that option here just yet. That most likely is going to be what actually ends up happening for Tesla stock. Now, going to the daily chart, right? We did obviously break down from this congestion. Now, we did break down from the downside, which is why I said that even if we have a green day tomorrow to, like, let's say the mid to high 240s, it doesn't mean the stock is fully out of the woods just yet. This could just be a little bounce to retest the zone that clearly acted as a support and demand, just to make our way down potentially one more time to roughly equal lows, maybe even into earnings. But even if we were to do that, we're still contained within the zone. So ultimately the main picture is pretty simple, right? If you want to avoid as much noise as possible and you want to really just focus on what's the next actual big move, like what is it really going to do next? Never mind this, intraday chop and intraday, up and down movement where it's ultimately, despite the volatility, it's still pretty much within the same range at the end of the day, right? This whole range you can see here. Yeah, we had some volatile movements. Yeah, we had a sharp, aggressive rally. Yeah, we had like a 7% drop today, but it's still pretty much the same spot it has been for a couple weeks now, more or less, right? We're not actually going anywhere, right? And that's kind of what happens when you have these congestions, even with the volatility that we're clearly experiencing. So like I said, it needs to break above or below one of these two key points, right? One of these two needs to snap. At some point it will, but there's a good chance we'll have to wait until earnings for that. So let's see how that plays out moving forward. The last thing I want to talk about very quickly here on the weekly is going to be, well, something important that I've obviously always mentioned. Now, again, the way I look at Tesla is this: if earnings happens to go poorly, if Tesla happens to tank on earnings, and we break down below this situation here, we finally crack below it, and weaknesses being shown, etc., and we come down to pretty much sub 200, 190s, 180s, right, something like that, which it's a possibility for sure. You can't fully disregard that. I personally believe if that were to happen, we'd snap back pretty aggressively and pretty quickly from that. That's my personal belief. I could be wrong, of course, but my current belief is that I think we'll snap back very quickly because, number one, the MACD is actually looking slowly healthy despite us chopping and even arguably making our way down this week so far relative to last week. In terms of closing price, of course, on the weekly candles, MACD is still making higher lows, right? So the MACD is still looking pretty good, right? We're still really, really far away from the market bias, essentially, or the mean reversion, if you will, on the weekly time frame. We're still very, very far away from it, which is why, personally, I think there's a higher chance that we go higher than lower from here, but with the caveat that if we do actually end up going lower, if the earnings does tank the stock down to, let's say, 190, for instance, which again, it's a possibility, right? I do think that it'll snap back pretty quickly. Again, mainly because we're just so damn far away. It's kind of like, even here, you can see it constantly snapped back to the market bias essentially, which is really far away from us, right? It's sitting at mid 300s, right? That's extremely far away. And again, it's not common for a stock, especially like Tesla, to be this far away already as it is right this very moment, then to snap down to, let's say, 190 and then also stay there and especially go even lower when this is all the way up here. Because again, if you just zoom out, and again, this is not me trying to be, a blind bull or anything like that, right? Everyone up here was calling me a blind bear. Now not everyone, okay, but there are some people calling me a blind bull down here, right? And it's just because, again, obviously there's exceptions, like over here when Elon was selling, of course, nothing is perfect. There's always exceptions to any rule, right? That's just how things work. But the point is the fact that despite what happened, you can see, it always zigzags up and down through this market bias. At some point, it always reverts back to it, right? It always reverts back to it. And why would this be any different? I'm not saying it'll happen right away. It's a weekly chart. It could take time. But why would this be any different? Why would this time it just come down even lower, then maybe not even do anything? Why would it do that? Like, why suddenly now would it do that? That would essentially have to be something like this, which is not very often. It's a pretty rare case, which is when we were literally not only a bear market, but Elon was also selling a decent amount of shares to purchase Twitter, which is of course now X. So again, it's good to take things into perspective sometimes, right? And that's kind of that perspective where, again, it's just worth noting, right? It's worth noting. And the final thing that's worth noting is, again, Tesla likes to do the opposite of what's expected, also in a sense of where up here, again, everyone was yapping about this being a very large bull flag, and it technically was, but Tesla broke down. It likes to do these things. Same idea over here. What happened here? Massive rally, massive rally, nice little potential bull flag. Instead of going up like a normal bull flag, it went down. Tesla likes to do these kind of situations where it just sort of does the opposite of what you would expect, right? Same kind of idea over like these two here. You can argue that this was a massive bear flag right here, setting up, and it went up, not down. Same idea here, massive drawdown. You can argue this is a bit of a bear flag, and it went up. So Tesla, the point I'm just trying to make is Tesla likes to do these almost opposite type things where it's like it goes down and the technicals look weak and you're like, man, that just looks like a textbook bear flag, or man, that just looks like, a textbook bull flag. Like, Mike, how's that not a bull flag? And instead, it just does the opposite. Like, by any normal metrics, this looks like the most obvious bull flag you can potentially ask for. Like, it doesn't get cleaner than this. And then we went down. So again, this time could be different. This time, maybe it actually does play out like an actual bear flag, which this kind of has the resemblance of one. But again, just through history, the stock, it likes to do the opposite. It does like to do the opposite. But again, that's kind of my current analysis where, again, even if we drop down below, even if Tesla sees, let's say, 190 post earnings, I do believe that the snapback should be pretty quick and pretty aggressive. Personally speaking, just my opinion, not financial advice. Again, mainly because the overall mean reversion on the weekly has yet to occur. And if we go even farther away from it, I just can't imagine us not reverting back up pretty aggressively relatively soon, especially if we get that rally, which I believe we will get into June Robotaxi launching in Austin. So yeah, I mean, that's just my honest opinion, right? Again, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Who knows? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. But all we can do is take a look at history, take a look at the behavior of the stock, essentially, and the personality, if you will, of the stock, because every stock has a personality, which is why I like to usually focus on a select few tickers. I don't like to look at a million different stocks. I like to look at a few tickers, Tesla being by far the main one, because, stocks have a personality. They absolutely do. The way they behave, the way they perform, the way they move, they absolutely have personalities behind them. So, that's just kind of what I see. So let's see how that plays out. In terms of options flow on Tesla stock, let's take a quick look over here. Very bearish flow throughout the day. Obviously, right before that drop happened, I also warned my members about this very bearish flow right before the JPOW. You can see here, option flow on Tesla is pretty bearish heading into tomorrow and next week today. This is just before JPOW. And of course, we tanked shortly after. Too bad I was away from the computer, or else I could have played that, but I didn't. But it is what it is. But nonetheless, that's kind of my general perspective on Tesla. That's kind of the general perspective on options flow. Nothing really worth noting now, in my opinion, but a lot of bearish flow did come in for confirmed bearish flow on Tesla, over 72 million. So let's see how that plays out. But yeah, again, overall, that's my perspective. I think we'll have to wait until earnings to really see the next move. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you tomorrow. Peace.